Opening title appears. Universal Design in Higher Education. Title swipes across the screen, followed by Roger O. Smith, followed by Tim O'Connor, followed by UW-LaCrosse. Title fades to black. An Introduction to Universal Design in Higher Education, Part 2, Roger O. Smith. Video fades to black. Roger O. Smith standing behind a podium in front of an audience.
The A3 model is something that actually I learned from my students. And I was teaching a course where we were having students go out and learn about accessibility on campus. And they were evaluating different areas on campus of how accessible they were. And there aren't a lot of resources out there, and there particularly weren't when we started this project. And I told the students, so therefore, go on the internet, go into the literature, go into textbooks, talk to friends, talk to your seniors, talk to anybody that has resources and knows about accessibility and disability. And after a couple years, things went smoothly, but then a year came along where the student groups came up to me and they said, Roger, I don't understand the assignment. And I said, we've had a couple years where it's been going fine, so what's with you guys? And they said, well, we found this really interesting place on campus, and in Milwaukee it's called the Student Accessibility Center. And it's like June's office. And they said, you know what? There are people over there that come to work, the only thing they do is they support students with disabilities. That's their job. And if somebody needs some tutoring, they get tutoring. If they need a reader, they get a reader. If they need an interpreter, they get an interpreter. If they need special testing, they get special testing. Everything a student needs in terms of accessibility is at the Student Accessibility Center. So what is it do you want us to look at in terms of accessibility? We're supposed to evaluate campus for accessibility, but it's accessible. We have the Student Accessibility Center. And I went, whoa. Our students had this impression that our campus was accessible because we had one place that students could do something different than everybody else and go to this special place, say they have a disability, be unique, take special time out of their day to go take care of their disability. And I went, wait a second, something's not right here. And it sort of jingled an idea that we've actually been talking about for quite a while now, that accessibility tends to go through sort of organizational societal phases. So maybe this is a sociological comment or something. And we think that universal design goes through an advocacy, accommodation, and accessibility set of phases. And we want to briefly kind of talk about that. It's a conceptual model of how organizations address the needs of people with disabilities. Because somehow I had to talk to these students and say, no, 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 this campus isn't accessible even though we have a really great student accessibility center. So here's the overall model. It's sort of like a set of waves. If you come out of biology, maybe it looks like a stomach. But it's sort of this Nike kind of wave thing where there's three different sections. There's an advocacy section on the left, and an accommodation section in the middle, and the accessibility section on the right. And what you see is the proportions of those three different types of interventions of how we deal with people with disabilities is shifting. In the advocacy phase, it's sort of individual, personal, hey, I need something, and it's the squeaky wheel method. And then as an organization gets smarter, they say, well, we're going to start predicting that, and we start looking at more of individual accommodation. And there's where disability student services sprung up in every university campus. Let's provide services for students with disabilities. A little problem there, and that is a student has to say they have a disability and has to recognize that they have a disability, and then they have to go to the place to get the service. And so it's actually a fairly significant issue in terms of really meeting the needs of students with disabilities. But that's the accommodation phase, the accommodation strategy. And what we're trying to do is push through that into this last phase, which is more of a universal design intervention where we're getting to true accessibility. And we have a couple of examples here just to show you. But just a sort of a quick thought for LaCrosse. Think of your campus. What I've said about squeaky wheel, the student with a disability or an advocate has to say, I need a special this, or I need this. And that's the advocacy phase. Accommodation is you're depending on June's office for everything. And then accessibility is, you know what? We're trying to put June out of business. She doesn't have to worry. But how can we infuse and really provide the same service for everybody across the campus? So here we have a yellow bar on the left. We want to move it to the right. Out of curiosity, where do you think that bar should stop? Where would you say this campus resides right now? As in general, you're going to find hot spots that are still in the advocacy area, and you're going to find really great spots that are way on the accessibility side. But as a campus, where would you say you are? What do you guys think?
I'd say
In the middle?
I think you average it out.
Someplace in the accommodation phase? June, you're still in business. Anybody want to skew it one direction or the other? Say, this is a progressive campus. You guys have been talking about students with disabilities for a long time. Maybe it's to the right, or maybe some of you say, you know how severe the problems are on this campus? We're barely out of advocacy.
I would skew to the left a bit.
To the left?
To the left.
Saying we're still closer to the advocacy side. There's a lot of work to do.
I think one thing I could make a comment, there are certain colleges that are more in that accessibility range. One of the things we used to do is provide a lot of note-taking. That has gone down 1/3 with professors putting their PowerPoints and that information on the internet, so students don't have to write everything down. So I see a real change in that particular one. Alternative media is still way behind in terms of providing textbooks.
The students I see with academic skills and that often are referred from June's shop, I guess I would skew it more to the right because they're very satisfied with what they get, but are always looking for other things. But I would skew it a little to the right.
Okay, so we have the center, maybe a little bit to the left, maybe a little bit to the right. So maybe it's a philosophical thing or where your office happens to be on campus. So, well, let's see. What did we think? Well, that's where we'd like to be thinking that our UW system campuses are moving towards. I think that's a little bit too progressive, and we're probably not there. But we'd like to think we're getting to that accessibility phase, and that's why we're here today. Okay, just as one sort of concrete example here. Here's an advocacy example where we have somebody in a wheelchair who wants to get in the door. That's simple, get in the door. They're having to advocate. The person here is waving, yelling, and knocking to draw attention and say, hey, let me in. It might be because it's locked. It might be because the door is too heavy and you can't get it open. For whatever reason, they're getting attention to themselves to be able to get in the door. So, and we can even see that we're saying that there's some knocking of the door in the background for those of us who can hear. Accommodation in the A3 model then is the institution is anticipating that something needs to happen. We need to take notes, we need to read things, we need to take tests, or we need to get indoors. So we anticipate the individual needs. Here a worker, it turns out there's a cafe right inside that door, is told as a part of their job description, watch for that door, and if someone can't get that door open, get out there and open it for them. So we have a person, an organization that is set up to watch out for people in special needs. And it's embedded in the structure. So there's accommodation. We can help people who say that they have a disability and they have a special need. Lastly, accessibility in the A3 model then becomes the automatic doorway. The automatic doorway opens when rolled upon, walked upon, making the doorway accessible to everyone. That also means if you're carrying a bunch of boxes, the doorway opens. It also means that if you have a hand truck, the doorway opens. It's not made for people with disabilities. It's anybody that needs the door open when they can't open it. Little story behind this, and I'm sorry I always have to digress for these little stories, but this happens to be a doorway at UW Milwaukee that has a floor mat for a door that opens. And this door, I don't know why, but this doorway that has an automatic floor mat goes out onto a balcony that doesn't go anywhere. And therefore, somewhere along the line, the physical plant turned the floor mat off. So we have an example, and I don't know how that door is staying open right now. Maybe it's because it's propped open or something, just to show you this on the slide. But we really don't have that many functioning floor mats in Milwaukee.
Video fades to black. Closing. R2D2 logo appears. Title reads, copy and distribute freely, but use in its entirety and do not alter. Access said project, copyright 2009, Rehabilitation Research Design and Disability R2D2 Center. Please visit us at access-ed.r2d2.uwm.edu. The Access Ed project is supported in part by the U.S. Department of Education Office of Post-Secondary Education, PR Award P33A050090. The Access Ed documents contained in this video are those of the grantee and do not necessarily reflect directly on the U.S. Department of Education.